Welcome back to the channel. You've been pruning wrong your entire life. Not kind of wrong, biomechanically wrong. Every snip you make is either a gift to the plant or a slow, silent wound that never heals properly. And nobody told you because nobody talks about the physics buried inside your own hands. Let that land for a moment. You've likely spent hundreds of hours bent over soil, branches, and stems, believing that your enthusiasm and intuition were enough. They are not. The difference between a thriving orchard and a disease-ridden mess isn't luck, it's applied physics. And the most dangerous part? You can't see the damage you're doing, not immediately. The plant doesn't scream. Your wrist doesn't snap on the first bad cut. It accumulates. Day after day, season after season. A dull angle here, a twisted reach there. And then one morning you wake up with a shoulder that clicks, or you notice half your rose canes turn black at the cuts. That's not bad luck. That's the bill coming due for ignoring leverage, shear stress, and the brutal truth that your body and your plant are both governed by the same unforgiving laws of physics. You are not an artist with scissors. You are a mechanical system interacting with another mechanical system. And right now, most of you are operating at 40% efficiency while blaming your tools, your age, or your bad back. The problem isn't your back. The problem is you never learned where to stand. Gardening shows made you believe pruning is an art. It's not. Art doesn't care about leverage. Art doesn't calculate shear stress. But your joints do. Your plant's vascular system does. You've been crushing stems instead of cutting them and wondering why disease keeps showing up. Here's your first shock. A dull bypass pruner doesn't cut. It crushes. And crushed cells don't heal. They rot. Think about what happens when you step on a ripe tomato. The skin splits unevenly, juice leaks out, and within hours, mold finds it. That's exactly what you're doing to every branch you prune with a dull or misaligned blade. The plant's cambium layer, a microscopic ring of actively dividing cells just beneath the bark, gets squeezed, ruptured, and smeared instead of sliced cleanly. Those ruptured cells die instantly. They cannot regenerate. They form a necrotic zone that the plant must then wall off using energy it should be spending on flowers, fruit, or foliage. And because the cut surface is jagged, water pools in the microscopic crevices. Standing water on a wound is an open invitation to fungal spores, bacteria, and borers. You didn't prune. You performed a minor surgery with a rusty spoon, and then you walked away proud of yourself. The second shock is even worse. Most gardeners don't even know they're crushing because they've never felt a truly sharp, correctly tensioned pruner make a clean cut. They mistake resistance for cutting through something tough. No, resistance means you're mashing. A clean cut offers a single crisp snick and zero crushing of the bark edges. If you see white, shredded fibers hanging off your cut, that's plant flesh that died because of you. Every single one of those fibers is a failure of physics, and the plant remembers, not emotionally but structurally. That wound will heal slower, grow weaker, and remain a point of entry for disease for the entire life of that branch. So here's the brutal question you need to ask yourself right now. How many of your plant's chronic problems are actually just your pruning technique masquerading as bad luck? Every time you reach too far, twist your wrist, and force a cut, you're turning your spine into a lever with the wrong fulcrum. Your lower back isn't designed for that torque. Your shoulder is a ball and socket joint, not a crowbar. The physics doesn't care about your enthusiasm. Force without alignment equals injury. That ache after 20 minutes, that's not tired muscles. That's structural failure happening at the cellular level inside your own tendons. Let's get specific. When you extend your arm fully and lean forward to reach a branch, your lumbar spine is now acting as a class 3 lever. Your erector spinae muscles are contracting with force roughly 5 to 8 times greater than the weight of your upper body and the pruner combined. That branch you're cutting might weigh 200 grams. Your lower back is experiencing the equivalent of lifting a small child. Now do that 50 times. Now do it 3 times a week. Now wonder why you need a chiropractor. The solution isn't stretching. The solution is physics. Move your feet. Get your torso directly under or slightly ahead of the cut. Shorten the lever arm between your shoulder and the branch. Every centimeter you reduce that distance cuts the load on your spine exponentially, not linearly. You've been told to bend your knees as generic advice. That's not wrong, but it's incomplete. Bend your knees and keep your elbows within the frame of your ribs. Your elbows should never travel outside the width of your rib cage during a cut. If they do, you've introduced torque at your shoulder joint. Torque is rotation. Your rotator cuff hates rotation under load. That's not aging, that's abuse. And you're doing it to yourself because nobody ever told you that your body is a machine with rules. Here's the harshest truth in this entire script. Your gardening pain is not inevitable. It is engineered by your own poor stance, poor reach, and poor understanding of where your joints are weakest. The plant doesn't care if you hurt. Nature has no sympathy. But you could stop hurting tomorrow by changing 3 angles: your hip angle, your elbow angle, and the angle of your blade. Most people won't. They'll buy a foam kneeling pad instead and keep destroying their spine. That's not gardening. That's masochism with foliage. You want the truth? Most gardeners waste 60% of their energy fighting their own tool angle. Proper pruning means the blade meets the branch at a 30-degree angle. No more, no less. Too steep, you slip. Too flat, you crush. And here's the brutal part. If your elbow drops below your wrist during the cut, you just lost all mechanical advantage. You're now using muscle instead of physics. Muscle fatigues. Physics never does. Let's break down why that 30-degree angle is non-negotiable. The blade of a bypass pruner works like a wedge. A wedge transfers force perpendicular to its motion. At 0 degrees, blade perfectly horizontal relative to the branch, you're not cutting. You're pressing the branch against the lower hook and smashing both sides. At 60 degrees or more, the blade wants to slide along the bark instead of biting into the wood. 30 degrees is the sweet spot where the wedge angle matches the shear strength of the lignin-cellulose matrix inside the branch. At that angle, the blade separates the cell walls cleanly, requiring roughly 40% less force than a 15-degree or 45-degree approach. 40% less force means 40% less strain on your hand muscles, your wrist tendons, and your elbow ligaments. It also means 40% less crushing damage to the plant. That's not a small improvement. That's the difference between a cut that seals in 7 days and a cut that stays open for 3 weeks. Now add the elbow rule. Your elbow must remain at or above the horizontal line of your wrist at the moment of blade contact. Why? Because your forearm muscles generate maximum grip strength when your wrist is in a neutral or slightly extended position, 20 to 30 degrees upward. When your elbow drops, your wrist bends downward. That's called flexion. In flexion, your grip strength drops by nearly 50%. 50%. You are literally twice as weak in that position. So you compensate by squeezing harder. Harder squeezing means more muscle fatigue. More fatigue means sloppier cuts. Sloppier cuts mean more crushing. More crushing means more disease. See the cascade? One lazy elbow position creates a chain reaction of failures that ends with dead branches and a sore forearm. And you've been doing this for years, blaming the pruners, blaming the weather, blaming anything except your own ignorance of basic biomechanics. The fix is insultingly simple. Before every cut, check your elbow. Is it above your wrist? Yes? Cut. No? Move your body or reposition the branch. That's it. That one check eliminates more than half of all pruning-related inefficiency. But most people won't do it because it feels fussy. They'd rather be fast than correct. Speed without physics is just damage done quickly. Plants don't bleed red, but they do bleed. When you apply uneven pressure, you create shear stress across the cambium layer, the plant's circulatory highway. A clean cut heals in days. A sheared, ragged cut stays open for weeks, leaking water, inviting fungus, and wasting the plant's energy on defense instead of growth. You think you're pruning. You're actually creating a chronic wound. That's not gardening, that's neglect with good intentions. Shear stress in plant tissue works exactly like shear stress in metal. Imagine taking 2 steel plates glued together. If you pull them straight apart, tension, the glue resists evenly. If you slide them sideways, shear, the glue tears along a diagonal line. The same happens inside a branch. The cambium cells are glued together by pectin. A sharp, angled cut applies tension. The cells separate along natural fracture planes. A dull or misaligned cut applies shear. The pectin bonds rip unevenly, dragging adjacent cells out of alignment and killing them through mechanical tearing. Those dead cells release phenolic compounds as a distress signal. Those phenolics attract pathogens. Within 24 hours, you've turned a pruning wound into a buffet for fungal hyphae. But here's what most people don't understand. Plants cannot heal in the animal sense. Animals regenerate tissue. Plants compartmentalize. That means they don't replace dead cells. They build walls around them. Every ragged cut forces the plant to build a thicker, more energy-expensive wall around a larger zone of dead tissue. That energy comes from the same pool used for root growth, flower production, and disease resistance. So when you make a bad cut, you're not just wounding the plant, you're stealing from its future harvest. And you're doing it invisibly. The plant won't wilt. It won't cry. It will just underperform for the next 3 years while you wonder why your neighbor's tomatoes are bigger. The neighbor didn't have a secret fertilizer, the neighbor had a sharp blade and an understanding of shear planes. That's it. That's the whole secret. One piece of physics that separates competent gardeners from frustrated ones. And you've been living on the frustrated side because nobody ever told you that the of a cut matters. A clean cut sounds like a single crisp snap, one syllable. A sheared cut sounds like a crunch or a grinding noise, multiple syllables. Listen, your pruners are telling you the truth. Most people refuse to hear it because hearing it means admitting they've been wrong for a decade. Here's a shift you can use today. Cut 1 millimeter above the bud collar, the slight swelling where branch meets stem, and angle your blade away from the bud. Why? Physics of sap flow. Water tension pulls moisture toward the highest point. If you cut flat, water pools on the wound. If you cut at 15 degrees, runoff happens naturally. That single degree of tilt separates professional arborists from backyard butchers. You are now responsible for that difference. Let's go deeper. The bud collar is not just a random bump. It's a specialized ring of tissue packed with undifferentiated meristem cells. Those cells are the plant's emergency responders. When you cut correctly, the bud collar activates and grows a protective callus over the wound within days. When you cut too close, flush against the main stem, you remove the collar entirely. The plant loses its ability to close the wound. Rot sets in. When you cut too far, leaving a stub, the dead wood beyond the collar becomes a wick that draws moisture and pathogens straight into living tissue. 1 millimeter above the collar is the Goldilocks zone. That millimeter is measured with your eyes, not a ruler. Too many gardeners use the eyeball it method, which means they're wrong more often than not. The fix is to slow down. Look at the branch-bud junction from 2 different angles before you cut. Identify the subtle ridge of the collar. It often looks like a tiny raised donut around the base of the bud. Then position your blade so that the cut starts just above that ridge and angles downward away from the bud. Why away? Because if you angle toward the bud, you risk damaging the bud's own vascular connection. That bud is next year's flower or leaf. You just killed it. 15 degrees away from the bud is the optimal runoff slope. Water droplets will bead and roll off instead of sitting on the cut surface. Sitting water creates a boundary layer of high humidity. High humidity on a wound is a fungal spore's dream home. You are essentially building tiny swimming pools for pathogens every time you cut flat, and you've done it thousands of times. Think about the cumulative cost. Every flat cut adds days to healing time. Over a single growing season, 50 bad cuts means weeks of additional healing demand on the plant, weeks of energy diverted from growth, weeks of open wounds. That's not a small inefficiency. That's a systemic tax on the entire organism. And you pay that tax in reduced yields, increased disease, and shorter plant lifespans. The most successful vegetable growers and arborists aren't magical. They just obsess over millimeters and degrees. They measure, they adjust, they check. You've been moving too fast, assuming your intuition was physics. Intuition evolved for avoiding predators, not for optimizing shear planes. Your gut feeling is wrong. Trust the angle. Heavy pruners feel quality. They feel solid. But every gram of mass at the tip of your tool multiplies leverage against your joints. A 200-gram pruner at full extension becomes 2 kilograms of rotational force at your wrist. Do that 100 times. Your carpal tunnel doesn't care about brand names. Lightweight, sharp, properly aligned, those are your only friends. Everything else is ego pretending to be durable. Let's do the actual physics. A standard bypass pruner weighs between 200 and 350 grams. The distance from your wrist pivot point to the center of mass of the tool is roughly 15 centimeters. The torque at your wrist equals mass times gravity times distance. That 200-gram pruner creates 0.3 newton meters of resting torque just from its own weight. Now add the force of cutting, approximately 20 to 40 newtons depending on branch thickness. That adds another 3 to 6 newton meters. Total torque at your wrist, 3.3 to 6.3 newton meters. Every single cut. That's the equivalent of holding a 1.5 kilogram weight at arm's length for every cut. But here's what the tool companies don't tell you. Heavier pruners with cushioned grips actually increase torque because they shift the center of mass farther from your hand. Cushioning doesn't reduce strain, it reduces feedback. You can't feel the blade alignment as clearly through foam, so you grip harder. Harder grip increases muscle tension. Muscle tension reduces blood flow. Reduced blood flow accelerates fatigue. Fatigue leads to sloppy form. Sloppy form leads to crushing. Crushing leads to plant disease and joint pain. The entire industry has sold you a lie, that more material equals more quality. In truth, the best pruner is the lightest one that maintains blade alignment under load. That usually means forged aluminum handles, not cast steel. It means a spring return mechanism, not because it's convenient, but because it reduces the eccentric load on your thumb during reopening. Your thumb is not a structural pillar. It's a precision digit. Asking it to help reopen a heavy pruner against spring tension is like asking a watchmaker to hammer nails. The second hidden cost of heavy tools is cumulative microtrauma. Every torque spike at your wrist creates microscopic tears in the transverse carpal ligament. Those tears heal, but with scar tissue. Scar tissue is less elastic than original tissue. Over years, your wrist becomes stiffer, less forgiving of off-angle loads, and more prone to repetitive strain injury. That slow stiffening is not getting older. It's the physical record of every tool choice you made. Lightweight pruners aren't for weak people. They're for smart people who understand that fatigue is the enemy of precision. And precision is the only thing that keeps your plants and your hands functioning. So here's your audit. Go weigh your pruners. If they're over 250 grams, sell them. Buy a 180-gram forged aluminum model with replaceable blades. Your wrist will thank you in 5 years. Your plants will thank you in 5 weeks. And your ego? Your ego can find something else to feel tough about. Strength was never the point. Physics was always the point. Slow cuts don't give you control. Slow cuts make you push. Pushing increases friction. Friction tears cells. The physics truth? A decisive, moderate speed cut produces less total force on both blade and branch than a hesitant grinding one. Commit or don't cut at all. Hesitation is not caution. Hesitation is dullness expressed through motion. Here's why speed matters at the molecular level. Plant cell walls are composed of cellulose microfibrils embedded in a lignin hemicellulose matrix. This composite material is viscoelastic, meaning its stiffness changes depending on the speed of applied force. At very slow speeds, taking more than 1 second to complete a cut, the cell walls have time to deform plastically. They stretch, then tear, producing a ragged edge. At moderate speeds, roughly half a second per cut, the material behaves elastically. It snaps cleanly along the natural fracture planes between cells. That's the sweet spot. At very high speeds, faster than you can control safely, you risk slipping and damaging adjacent tissue. So optimal cutting speed is deliberate but not slow. Think the tempo of a drum beat, one clean motion, no pause, no hesitation. The problem is psychological. Most gardeners are afraid of making a mistake, so they creep the blade forward, checking alignment continuously. That creeping motion multiplies friction. Friction generates heat. Heat denatures the proteins in the plant's cell membranes at the cut site. Denatured proteins coagulate into a sticky barrier that both pathogens and healing cells struggle to cross. You have literally cooked the wound edge through frictional heat. Not enough to see, but enough to measure. Surface temperatures on a slowly cut branch can rise 5 to 8 degrees Celsius above ambient. That's well within the range that kills cambium cells. So your caution, your desire to be careful, is directly killing plant tissue. The irony is brutal. The careful gardener creates worse wounds than the confident one. Confidence doesn't mean reckless, it means trusting the physics. A sharp blade, a 30-degree angle, an elbow above wrist, and a clean half-second pull. That's the formula. Any deviation from that formula is not care, it's compensation for poor setup. You hesitated because you weren't sure of your angle. You weren't sure of your angle because you didn't check it before starting the cut. You didn't check because you were in a hurry. And you were in a hurry because you have too many plants and not enough time management. The hesitation is not the problem. The hesitation is a symptom of a broken workflow. Fix the workflow. Before you even raise the pruners, decide the cut angle, check your elbow, find the bud collar, breathe once, then cut in one smooth motion. That breath is not meditation. That breath is a trigger for motor unit recruitment. Your muscles need that quarter second to coordinate the dozens of motor units involved in grip, wrist angle, and forearm rotation. Skip the breath and your muscles fire asynchronously, creating a jerky cut. The jerky cut is the physical manifestation of impatience. Patience is not slow motion. Patience is correct motion done at the correct speed. Master that distinction and your pruning speed will actually increase while your wound quality improves. That's the paradox most never grasp. Going slower in setup makes you faster in execution because you never have to recut and you never have to retreat from a bad angle. Every recut is a second wound on the same branch. 2 wounds cost 3 times the healing energy of 1. So hesitation doesn't just create a bad cut, it often creates multiple bad cuts. Stop being careful, start being correct. Stop asking, is this branch too big? Start asking, where is my elbow relative to my hip when I cut? Position is physics. Physics is healing. Healing is growth. You don't need a stronger body, you need better leverage. You don't need a sharper pruner, you need to stop abusing the sharp one you already own. Respect the lever, respect the angle. The plant will heal faster than your joints will. Act accordingly. This mindset shift is the single most powerful takeaway in this entire breakdown, because most gardeners are obsessed with the wrong variables. They obsess over branch thickness, tool brand, cutting angle in isolation, or the phase of the moon. None of that matters if your body is in the wrong position. Your body is a system of levers. Your spine is a series of fulcrums. Your joints are pivot points. Every cut you make involves no fewer than 7 lever systems: fingers, wrist, elbow, shoulder, spine, hip, knee. If any one of those levers is out of alignment, the others compensate by absorbing extra load. That compensation is invisible until it fails. And it fails not as a dramatic snap, but as a slow accumulation of microdamage that one day becomes, I guess I'm just getting old. No, you're not getting old. You're getting misaligned. The difference between a gardener who prunes without pain at 70 and one who quits at 50 is not genetics. It is the consistent application of leverage physics to their own body. Let's make this concrete. When you prune a branch at waist height, your elbow should be bent at roughly 90 degrees, tucked near your ribs. That keeps the load on your strong biceps and brachialis muscles, not on your vulnerable rotator cuff. When you prune above shoulder height, you should be on a step stool or ladder, not because you're weak, but because overhead leverage multiplies the load on your shoulder joint tenfold. That's not weakness, that's physics. When you prune below knee height, kneel on one knee with your opposite elbow resting on the opposite thigh. That transfers the load from your lower back to your quadriceps, the largest, strongest muscle group in your body. These are not tips. These are non-negotiable biomechanical rules. Break them and you pay. Maybe not today, but the bill always comes. The second part of this shift is about the plant's healing. Every time you make a clean, well-angled cut, you trigger a predictable cascade. Within minutes, the plant deposits suberin, a waterproof polymer, over the cut surface. Within hours, it begins producing callus tissue from the bud collar. Within days, the wound is sealed. That speed is only possible when the cut geometry is correct. A poor cut geometry delays sealing by weeks. Weeks of open wound means weeks of water loss. Water loss means reduced turgor pressure. Reduced turgor means wilted leaves, slower growth, and increased susceptibility to drought stress. Your one bad cut has now affected the entire plant. That's not a small thing, that's a cascade. So the mindset shift is this. Stop seeing pruning as a chore. Start seeing it as a precision interaction between two physical systems, your body and the plant. Every cut is a conversation. A clean cut says, grow here. A ragged cut says, fight to survive here. The plant listens. It always listens. The only question is what you're saying. You've got 2 choices by tomorrow morning. Keep gardening like a hobbyist, aching back, rotting cuts, wasted energy, or spend 15 minutes recalibrating how you hold a tool and where you stand. One path leads to 50-year-old knees that still work. The other leads to excuses. Go pick up your pruners, find a branch, check your elbow, adjust your angle, make one perfect cut. Then decide if you're ready to stop pretending and start gardening like the physics actually matters. Your move. Because the universe doesn't care about your intentions. It cares about force, angle, and shear stress. Those are the only things that have ever mattered. Your grandmother's green thumb was just applied physics she couldn't name. Now you can name it. Now you can use it. Or you can keep crushing stems and wondering why nothing grows right. The gap between those two futures is about 2 centimeters of blade alignment and 15 degrees of elbow bend. That's all. That's everything. Most people will watch this, nod, and never change a single thing. They'll close the tab and go back to the same bad habits because change feels harder than pain. Pain is familiar. Change is not. But you're still here. That means part of you already knows you've been doing it wrong. That part is tired. That part is ready. So here's your challenge. Do not prune another single branch until you have adjusted your stance, checked your elbow, and angled your blade. Not one branch, not even a dead leaf. Break the automatic pattern first. Rebuild it consciously. Then, after 7 days of corrected pruning, look at your hands. Look at your plants. Listen to your lower back. The difference will be undeniable. And when someone asks you how you got so good, tell them the truth. You stopped gardening like an artist and started gardening like a physicist. Now go do the work.